I'm Kelsey.
And I'm Emily.
And this is A Trial by Podcast.
I like that last.
Fucking killed it. All right, so we are back. Emily, how are you today?
I'm doing great. 78 degrees in Ohio right now.
Yeah,
so
in April. So I know you guys are probably hearing this in like July of 2026 because we're recording stuff so far ahead of time. But this is unusual weather. It's beautiful outside. So we're, of course, recording in my dad's basement with no windows in the dark. So that's fun. We're really enjoying the beautiful weather.
For context, we had snow about a week and a half ago. So.
Yes. So anyway, we're back for part 2 of the Eastburn case. Yeah. But anyway, I think let's get started.
And with that being said,
let's do it. So where we left off last week was that Tim Hennis was just granted a second trial. So this time at the second trial, the defense had an advantage compared to their first trial. They knew the state's entire case, so all they had to do was discredit it piece by piece. And at this point, they had a few years to prepare to do this. So first, and most importantly, they needed to discredit the prosecution's smoking gun, which was Patrick Cohn. So they paint Cohn as
a whistleblower,
as a liar, a thief, anything they could to the jury. They outline a handful of criminal offenses that Cohn had made during and after the first trial. So these offenses included attempting to use a stolen debit card, not Katie's, driving with an expired registration, and obstructing an officer while publicly intoxicated. Apparently, he told the officer something along the lines of like, you can't arrest me, I'm helping you guys. Like, you need to check with your district attorney. They know me, I'm their witness. Like, I'm a witness in the Hennis trial.
He's like, oh, I gave you this, so that's my get out of jail free card.
Right. I was like, this is very like Reese Witherspoon of him. Like, have you heard the like audio, like when she got pulled over for a DUI and she's like, do you know who I am? That's we need to get like a soundboard and have that clip on there. Yeah. Like, do you know who I am?
Wait, let me see.
That's basically what he did.
I'm now being arrested and handcuffed?
Yep.
Do you know my name, sir?
Don't need to know.
You don't need to know my name?
Not quite yet. I'll get that
really?
information.
Okay. You're about to find out who I am.
That's fine. I'm not real worried about you, ma'am. I done told you.
So, again, very Reese Witherspoon of him, but it worked. His charges were dismissed every time. And there was one time that he was even pulled over for drunk driving by Detective Watts himself. And Cohn failed the sobriety test. But instead of arresting Cohn, Watts told a friend in the car, so it was Cohn and his buddy, and he tells his buddy, you drive him home and make sure he gets home safe, and did not charge him with anything. So this friend later told Hennis's attorneys for the defense, even though Cohn's working for the prosecution, Cohn's friend is now talking to the defense. He told them that Cohn once told him, I can do anything I want, saying because he's a witness in this trial.
Yeah.
So they're kind of painting him as like a drunk. Like, this guy's a drunk. He's untrustworthy. He drinks. He might misremember. He thinks whatever. But they wanted to prove that his original testimony was flawed and the jury could not trust it. So one thing they attacked was that Cohn had testified that the weather on the night that he saw this man leave the house was nice enough to see the stars. But they pulled meteorology reports that stated it had actually been a cloudy night. They don't say how cloudy. I'm like, I don't know if
that's hearsay, you know.
Like, and there's times when it's like sporadically cloudy.
Yeah,
and
like you can see a star or two and say, oh, you can see the stars, and it's still cloudy.
Right. So they also had a local helicopter pilot that was flying a life flight that night testify, and he said he remembered the weather being, quote, very dark overcast, aka not enough to see the stars. So basically what they're trying to present, like the idea they're trying to present, is that maybe Cohn, because he's a drunk and blah, 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 he's remembering the wrong night.
Mm-hmm.
Now, again, it's like...
So they're thinking he's remembering Tuesday when he went and picked up the dog.
Well, no, because Hennis said that he picked up the dog just before 9 p.m. Tuesday night. He saw him 3:30 a.m. They're just trying to give reasonable doubt. I think they're not trying to say what happened, but they're saying this is not a solid story.
Right.
We cannot
can't
what
confirm this.
Yeah, we can't convict a guy based on what this guy's saying. Like, this is not solid.
But then how does he know who he is? You know, he had to have seen this guy. He had to have known that he was there because he gave that sketch, and that was to a T what he was, and he knew of his car.
And he picked him out in the photo lineup.
Yeah.
So, and that's the thing, the car
and the
too.
jacket.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
God.
So again, it's like, if you're trying to say all these things are coincidences, unluckiest man in the world.
Literally.
Now, Watts later told the New Yorker, quote, Mr. Cohn had some problems. He was a street kid and he drank, but he didn't have to come forward. To this day, I believe every word he told us, end quote. So they believe this kid. They're like, okay, so what? He drinks, whatever. Like, and he had criminal offenses. Like, this guy wasn't squeaky clean. Nothing serious.
Yeah.
But he's saying,
he's
like,
never been accused of murder.
This guy came forward and inserted himself. And I should note that this is a black man in 1985 inserting himself in the investigation of the murder of a white woman and her 2 white children. So I have to assume, you know, and I guess I shouldn't, I don't know, whatever, cancel me for this, that's got to be nerve-wracking for him.
Yeah.
That would be nerve-wracking for someone today to do.
Yeah, exactly.
And in 1985, I am assuming that it was probably even worse.
Yeah.
And this guy came forward and had to trust the police, and that they did. And so I think Watts is defensive of him.
What other motive would he have to come forward with that information?
Right, exactly. So the defense, unfortunately, seemed to present a compelling argument and discredit Patrick Cohn pretty well in the eyes of the jury. They also attacked another key witness's testimony, Miss Cook from the ATM. They pointed out that the first time she spoke to police in regards to using the ATM that night, she actually told them, I don't really remember anything about that night. Now, they point out how convenient it was that she started to remember the man and his car after speaking with police. So, you know, we don't know the details on this. I can't find like the court transcripts or anything. But in my mind, I'm picturing it this way. Like, they're like, hey, we know that you used an ATM like last week on Saturday night, and you used it a couple minutes after someone we're looking into. Like, do you remember him? Mm-hmm. And she's like, I don't know. I don't really remember anything. But I could also see, like, if you saw someone just walking from the ATM as you're walking up to it, you're not going to think about that ever again.
Yeah.
Unless the police come to you. But then I could see how, like, okay, then you kind of walk yourself through your day and you start to remember stuff.
Yeah.
Now, so they're saying, like, they're trying to insinuate that the police, like, told her what to say or whatever.
Yeah, they're probably like, oh, so you didn't see a blonde-haired man with a mustache in a jacket or in this certain car or...
Right. But, like...
And then, I mean, yeah, obviously she's probably like, well, maybe I did.
Now, the woman, she stuck to her testimony. She says the police didn't tell her what to say. Everything she testified to in the first and second trials were true. She does remember seeing the man. She remembers seeing him get into the car. But they also harped on the fact that she had used the ATM 3.5 minutes after Tim Hennis. So what the defense does is they make the courtroom sit in silence for 3.5 minutes just to, like, exemplify how long it really was.
Yeah. I mean, that is kind of a long time if you think about it. Like,
exactly.
I mean, that's a long time for somebody to walk from the ATM to their car.
Exactly.
In 3 minutes. I mean, that would take, what, 30 seconds?
That's what I agree. And it's like, okay, well, they say 3.5 minutes, but is that from when you put your card in or from when you take it out? Because, okay, let's say it's from when you take it out. He finishes, he walks to his car. let's say she's walking, like she's parked when he gets into his car. She gets out of the car, she walks up, she uses it. By the time she takes her card out, maybe that's 3.5 minutes.
Yeah.
But if it's 3.5 minutes from the time he took his card out to when she put her card in, I'm like,
That's
that seems
kind
like
of
a long,
yeah.
it does seem like
That's
a long
kind of a long
time.
time.
Yeah. So I don't know what to think about this. She
I
also
mean-
did identify him in a photo lineup, but I think they're trying to insinuate like the police were leading her.
Yeah, exactly. Leading her on for sure.
So, but the woman, Miss Cook says, she's like, nuh-uh. Like, everything I said was true.
Yeah, like
So-
I'm not fibbing.
Now,
She's probably like, I may not have a photographic memory, but I know I am aware of what happened and who I saw.
right, exactly. So it also came out during the second trial that 2 months before her murder, Katie had been receiving threatening phone calls in the middle of the night. The caller would call Katie by her name and say like, oh, you're so beautiful. Like, I'm going to come over, blah, 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 blah. She had no idea who this was. So the defense is presenting the question, is that Mr. X? Was the caller Mr. X? Because keep in mind, as far as we know or can prove, Hennis did not meet Katie until Tuesday, 2 nights before the murder.
Right.
These calls were happening months before. So the likelihood that like no one suggests, not even the prosecution suggests like that these calls were coming from Tim Hennis.
I mean, yeah, how could they? Because he would have no idea who she was. Unless
Exactly.
they had met previously because he got her information from
So-
an ad in the paper.
What are the odds that she has this freaky stalker calling her in the middle of the night and then she gets murdered a couple months later and it's by a different person?
Right.
Unlucky
And none of the evidence matches besides the account from Cone. Oh.
Exactly. So, like, another weird thing about these calls is like when I was reading like articles and reports on the story, they never mentioned these calls until like the second trial. And I can't find anything about them being discussed during the first trial. But I did, like last night, I was watching footage from like news stations, like the day they found the bodies. They're outside the Eastburn house, the day they found the bodies. And they interview the neighbor who had like found the baby, Bob Seatfelt. And they also interviewed the Eastburn's babysitter. And they both mentioned the calls to the news. They said, I don't know, I know she was receiving these scary
They
phone
were just
calls.
like, oh, well, maybe it's just some prank.
But, well, so it's like, obviously police knew about these calls before the
Yeah.
first trial, but like it wasn't, and I assume the defense must have known about them too, but like, I don't know what was said about them in the first trial, but I wanted to mention that.
I'm sure that they were probably just like, we have this sketch, we have the car, we have this eyewitness placing this guy at their house. What else do we need? You
Right,
know? They're
right.
probably like, it doesn't matter if somebody was calling her and pranking her. It like that doesn't
But
matter.
then he gets this letter in prison. I'm Mr. X. Like, I did it.
Oh my
Sorry you're doing the
God.
time. And so they're, the defense is saying, this is Mr. X.
Yeah.
But they also, on top of refuting everything from the first trial, they also called 2 new witnesses. So the first was a woman who was like the newspaper delivery woman.
Mm-hmm.
She delivered newspapers every morning, and she testified that at 1:45 a.m. Friday morning, she saw a man with long, stringy hair driving a light-colored van in front of the Eastburns house. So again, they present the question is, could this be Mr. X at 1:45 a.m.? Now, the second witness was a teenage boy named John. Wait, remind me at the end of this. I just fucking had a thought.
Oh God.
This is very important. Remind me at the end of this when we're talking about the new witnesses, okay? Oh, light bulb. Okay. Sorry. The second witness was a teenage boy named John Raupaugh. I don't know if I'm saying it. Raupaugh. Raupaugh. John Raupaugh. I'm doing my best, guys.
Sorry if we butcher it.
So this teenage boy, he lived a couple blocks from the Eastburns. He testified that he had often had trouble sleeping, and he would actually just like walk around throughout the neighborhood at night. I don't know, just to kill time. There were no cell phones back then. It must have been rough. So he said he would walk down the Eastburn Street, Summerhill Road all the time. And he confirmed that the night of the murder, he was indeed outside walking. So why does this matter? The kid's outside walking. Well, even though he was just a teenager, he was extremely tall for his age. He was also blonde. And the night of the murders, he confirms that he was outside walking around past 3 a.m. wearing a knit beanie and, say it with me, a black members-only jacket.
Oh my God.
Doesn't that gave me goosebumps?
Yeah, literally, the whole body chills.
So one of the jurors later told the New Yorker, quote, "That guy was a spitting image of Hennis. They could have been brothers." That was more or less.
Is there a picture of him that we can compare the sketch to?
Girl, I got it. Hold on.
Oh, God.
Let me finish my quote.
Oh, I can't wait to see it.
That was more or less the icing on the cake for me.
Oh, God.
So,
yeah,
again, you're going to hear us moving around while I show Emily.
Oh, shit.
Get your mic, dude. So I've got two pictures. Same picture of Tim Hennis that we compared to the sketch earlier.
They could be related.
Exactly.
They look like they could be brothers.
So I've got the picture of the John Rapa guy, and this is the only picture I could find of him. I don't know how old he is in the picture, how long after the trial this was, whatever. But he does fucking look like Tim Hennis.
Yes,
if you had them side by side, like, it's not like they look like identical twins, but it's exactly what the juror said. It looks like they could be brothers. Mm-hmm. John has like a little bit more of like a round face compared to Tim. Like, Tim's face is a little more like defined, like jawline and stuff. And he does just like look a little bit older than John does.
Yeah.
But at 3:30 in the morning, when you're like groggy walking to work, if you saw this kid, I mean, and you don't know either of them. It's not like you're like, that's a guy I know or that's a guy I don't know. These are strangers. You could mistake them for each other.
Yeah. I mean, I would.
At the same time, though, when I look at John, I'm like, I don't know if they showed me a picture of Tim, if I would pick him out in the lineup.
The difference, because the sketch looks just like Tim. Same. I mean, the testimony from Cohn saying that he thought he saw him. And the lineup.
Yes.
Right?
But it also doesn't, like, to me, this isn't like evidence that's convincing that he didn't do it either. It's just like, okay, this doesn't matter. Because we don't know for sure that these footprints came from the killer.
Yeah.
Now, like I said, there was also that drop of blood on a towel in the bathroom, and the blood type didn't match Hennis's. But again, it's like, how do you know that that is blood from the killer? Like, they find the bodies 2 days after they're killed. So even if it was from the killer, like, it's dried. It's dried blood. So, like, what if it's just, like, a family friend or something?
Yeah, like somebody cut themselves shaving or,
Now, again, I think I mentioned this before, but they compared Hennis's prints to the prints found at the scene, and all of them either were not a match or they were inconclusive just because the prints were too smudged or, like, too incomplete to constitute a match.
And keep in mind, this is also in the 80s, so their forensic testing,
right? Like, they're not testing the blood for DNA;
Exactly.
they're just doing blood type.
Right.
Now, most damningly, the investigators had found a pubic hair near the couch in the living room that did not match anyone from the Eastburn family, and it also did not match Tim Hennis. Now, just what you said right then is they're not testing it for DNA. They're like visually comparing hairs like under a microscope.
Right.
So I don't know, like, does the carpet match the drapes? Are his pubes blonde? Like, I don't,
exactly.
Blonde people, like, respectfully, do you have blonde pubes?
Yeah, what's the downstairs area looking like? Is it the same
I don't
color
know.
as the upstairs?
I can't imagine it's blonde. That would be wild. That's weird, wild stuff.
I feel like if you have blonde pubic hair, you're a fucking unicorn, dude. Like,
honestly, what a that's sick. I wouldn't shave it, dude.
No.
It would be styled. There would be gel. Like, it would be looking good. I'll tell you that. Like,
all day.
Dude, what a beautiful bush that would be. Okay, so this pubic hair. A lot of people are like, okay, because remember, Katie's clothes, like her pants and the buttons ripped from her blouse and the torn under it, they were found in the living room, but Katie's body was found in the bedroom.
Oh, okay.
And this pubic hair was found on the floor in the living room.
Mm-hmm.
So like people are like, this is from whoever raped her.
Right.
But I don't know. Like that is compelling to me. I'm like, why is there it's not like it was a pubic hair that was in the bathroom.
Not
like,
everyone gets naked in the, like, how does a pubic hair end up in the living room?
that's what I'm saying is like, if it was found in the bathroom, you would be like, well, even if it was Tim
anybody can go to the
Hennis's,
bathroom.
even if it did match him, it was found in the bathroom. He could have been like, I used the bathroom at the house. And I'm
Yeah,
like,
when I
that
went to
doesn't
get the
prove
dog.
anything because
Exactly.
I see pubes on public toilets all the time.
Oh, every day.
Dude, Target, ugh,
Gross.
get it together, Target. Love you though. But, but like the fact, again, this is another thing that it's like the fact that it doesn't match Tim Hennis doesn't prove to me that he didn't do it. In my
Right.
mind, if it was found in her, like inside of Katie or something, or like on her,
Yeah, that's a different.
then I would say different. But this
even
house,
on her clothing, and it wasn't on her clothing, right?
not
it was just in the
what
living
I
room.
read is that it was like on the floor, that
Okay.
it wasn't on her clothing. But like, you know, because her clothes were there, they're thinking maybe she was raped in the living room and then taken to the bedroom.
Yeah.
But like, again, to me, this doesn't disprove it unless it's like they find whoever was making those weird phone calls and the pube matches him.
Yeah.
Or they find that the pube matches a family friend and it's just like, we don't know how it got there. Like,
So what about John? Did they test his pubes for this?
oh, John Rapaw.
Yeah.
I don't, not that I read, but I also like, I got zero impression that anyone ever like suspected John of being involved. But that's a
okay.
good question because what if he did it? What if that kid did it and he was like, oh yeah, I was just walking around that night. That guy
Yeah.
was just, and he came forward because he felt bad that the guy.
I mean, the guy did say Cone did say that saw a man in, what's that brand? The
Members only.
A black members only jacket with a knitted hat walking down their driveway. And he just
Emily,
why would
this
he
is a
be-
great question.
Why would he be walking down their driveway? Like,
That's what I'm saying. And that's why I'm like, I wish I could find more like, sorry if you hear my dog barking upstairs. I wish you could find more like detailed
Of
accounts
exactly what
because
Cohn
I want to
said.
know like, okay, when you first saw him, was he halfway up the driveway?
Yeah, like-
was he at the like by the house? Because again, this is kind of a longer driveway.
Right.
Like, so I really want to know because I think
like,
that does
okay,
change
like
it.
what direction was he coming from? Was
The-
he coming from the house or was he coming? Yeah,
The impression
you know?
I get is it sounds like when he first noticed him, he was kind of nearing the end of the driveway and just walking onto like the sidewalk or the street wherever Cone was walking. So it doesn't sound like he actually saw him like up near the house or anything like that. But he definitely gives the impression that to him it looked like the guy was coming from the house, like the way he was walking like from the driveway.
But also, didn't he say that he saw him
Molly.
walking towards that white car?
But like, this is the thing is, that's a great question. I would hope that they investigated this kid and like, I don't know.
Did their due diligence, you know?
But then it's like, if he's just walking around by himself, he doesn't really have an alibi.
yeah.
But also like, Tim Hennis took, I don't know, dude. And that's
What
the
is
thing.
the coincidence that that Cone saw him by their house, you know? And I don't know. There's just too many coincidences in this case. I don't know.
But he did, like, he saw who he thinks was Tim Hennis get into the white Chevette that was parked on the street and drive away. So I think that's probably why they think they're like convinced it was Tim Hennis over this kid, because this kid
Yeah.
didn't have a white
Doesn't
Chevette.
drive, yeah.
So yeah, anyway, this pubic hair, I think until it's matched to somebody, it doesn't prove he
It's not
didn't do
damning.
it, but
It's
I don't
not
know.
damning evidence.
But it's also like, why would that be there?
yeah.
I don't know.
Whose pubis?
So
God.
now, if you're like me, you're wondering, what about Hennis's weird wild weekend of dry cleaning and burn pits? Well, they tested
Yeah, what was that
Hennis's-
about? Oh my God.
They test Hennis's members only jacket, and they did not find a single drop of blood on it. And they had an expert witness testify that Varsol, which is the chemical that's used in dry cleaning, it can remove like a lot of the blood, if not most of the blood, But they said, it's impossible for it to remove all of it to the point that there's literally no trace of blood on it.
Yeah.
So
I mean, they would have to be scrubbing that.
So-
I mean,
in their opinion, like, there was never any blood on the jacket.
this guy just had the shit luck of getting his jacket dry cleaned, the same jacket. There's just so many coincidences.
But the thing that's weird is, like, he didn't get anything else dry cleaned. It was just the jacket.
Yeah, like,
and also, like, the fact that there's no blood on it is like, well, if it was covered in blood, I wouldn't take it to the dry cleaner. Like, maybe
Right.
he was worried about, like, fibers or hairs or something, and because maybe he just took the jacket off. It's
There's too
weird.
Many, there's too many questions around.
And
Tim
this
Hennis.
makes me also wonder, like, okay, so let's say he gets there, he takes the jacket off before doing anything, and that's why there's no blood on it, because there's no way he was wearing that jacket
And
when he
just had a
killed
dry
them.
clean just in case there was anything else on it.
Right. But then it's like, also, Patrick Cohn never said he came out covered in blood or anything.
Right.
So why didn't he have a fuck ton of blood on him? And I think, like, because Cohn said that he had some sort of bag, like, he doesn't know if it was, he can't remember for sure if it was a trash bag or backpack, but like something like slung over his shoulder.
So what
it's
if
like
what if he changed clothes? Because all of that blood in the bathroom, he obviously tried to clean something up.
Right.
Maybe he took a shower and washed everything off, put all of his, bloodied clothes in a bag, and then wherever he
but
was
then he
keeping
must have like brought a second set of clothes with him.
I mean, yeah.
that, yeah,
But maybe
I don't
that's-
know.
Maybe the bloodied clothes were what was in
And
the bag.
and that maybe that's what he was burning in the burn pit.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but they also had collected like the remnants of that burn pit, like whatever was left in the drum, and they didn't find anything that was like suspicious or anything that could be tied to the Eastburns in any way. Of course, in my mind, it's like, okay, but it's possible that the burning just did its job. But I agree. It's like they presented this evidence of like the whole burn pit, but nothing was found in it. So it's like, is that fucking weird and suspicious? Yes. But is that actually evidence that ties him to the crime? Not really. It's just,
Yeah, it could just be a dude trying to have a big fire.
But
by
to me,
himself,
it's like
having a dude's night in.
it's all these little things that like just that one, I'm like, that could be a coincidence, like an
Right.
unfortunate one, but it's all of them together. The jacket getting dry cleaned, the fact that he drives the white Chevette, that he looks just like the sketch, the whatever. None of these
ATM,
things, none of these things alone to me is like evidence against him. But when you look at them all together, you're like, if all of these are true and you did not do this, you have to be the fucking unluckiest
the
man.
unluckiest man.
So the defense at this point, this is going well for them. Like that, the fact that they were able to say, like, it was really John Rapaw that did it for the jury.
That
And they
switched
knew
it
it.
up,
Like,
yeah.
they knew the trial was going in their favor at this point. So they pulled a bold move and they put Tim Hennis on the stand to defend himself.
Oh.
So, as far as I could find, I found nothing that was even worth mentioning that he said, which shows me that this went very well he did a good job. He must have, because normally you hear these stories and you're like, that guy fucked himself. Why did he go on the stand? What an idiot.
Yeah.
But
I mean, put yourself in his shoes. He's like, I will literally do anything I can to prove my innocence. If that means going on the stand, I would.
yeah,
I mean,
don't know.
I mean, knowing that about true crime and everything, but like, I mean, yeah, if I was him, I'd be like, yeah, do whatever it takes. I did not do this, and I'm about to die for a crime I didn't commit.
Yeah. I don't know. It's wild, but like that just shows you, I feel like the fact that they even let him go on the stand, like his defense attorneys, like they were very
They
confident.
were desperate. I mean, yeah.
I feel like no, I think the opposite of desperate. I think they were confident that they were going to win this trial. And in their closing statement, they tell the jury, you have physical evidence crying to you, just absolutely crying to you that he's not the man. You've got a pubic hair in there that ain't him. They're putting a doggone square peg in a round hole, and it doesn't fit, and it stinks. And I'd like to say to that, very eloquent defense team, Jesus. But 2 days later, the jury came back and declared Tim Hennis not guilty on all counts. He had entered that courtroom that day, a death row inmate, and walked out a free man.
Damn. So okay, when we were talking about earlier about double jeopardy, are they allowed to present the same evidence when they
Yes.
retrial? So
this is
how
the
did
thing
they
is
present the photos again? Like, were they allowed to present
they were
them that
allowed to
same
present
way?
some of the photos, but not like
Not-
a gratuitous
not the way,
amount.
not the
But
aggressive
this
way.
is the thing is this is how it works with double jeopardy. So if you are convicted and you make appeals to get a retrial, that's not double jeopardy.
Mm-hmm.
The double jeopardy is when you are found not guilty, they cannot try you for the same crime again.
Okay.
Because then it's like they could just fucking
They could
try
just
you
keep
your
trying and
entire
trying.
life. Yeah, like
exactly.
so that's what it is.
So basically, if you're found not guilty of the crime, then they can't retry you again for it.
right. And that's why it's like OJ Simpson. Like everyone, a lot of people, whatever, I think OJ Simpson fucking did it. And he wrote a book, like, if I did it, whatever. And that's why, like, he was found innocent or found not guilty.
Mm-hmm.
So they can never retry. And that's why OJ Simpson he was actually found liable for the deaths in a civil suit that came from the Nicole Brown Simpsons and Ron. I forget his last name. I'm so sorry. Ron and Nicole's like families sued OJ saying that like he was responsible for the deaths, and they held a whole like civil lawsuit, which you can do because it's not a criminal trial. So it's not double jeopardy. And he was found guilty, and he was ordered to pay out. I don't think he ever actually gave them the money he owed them, but yeah, but like that's why he's still free, is like we can never retry him for that crime. Now, Hennis's exoneration caught nationwide attention, and it served as a catalyst for the creation of a commission whose sole purpose was to scrutinize law enforcement and prosecutorial, that is a really hard word to say, prosecutorial teams with the goal of minimizing wrongful convictions. Hennis's trials inspired the commission to adopt new standards for eyewitness identification. So basically, they're saying this guy was just convicted on the testimony of Cohn, and we can't be doing that. Now, to this day, defense attorneys still invoke North Carolina's 1988 Hennis ruling to limit the presentation of redundant photographs that could emotionally influence the jury. So basically, like the 1988 Hennis ruling refers to like the appeal that he filed when he appealed his conviction based on the grounds that like the photos biased the jury against him. Mm-hmm. And so like that ruling, like to this day, people are like, because the Supreme Court did it, like now they're saying that kind of set a precedent that you can't do that in any other trial because someone's already determined that it was wrong.
Yeah.
And so it's just kind of crazy in this wild case. So what happened after Hennis was freed? He decided to re-enlist in the Army. And not only was he promoted to staff sergeant after re-enlisting, but he was also awarded a good conduct medal and given 3 years of back pay for when he wasn't being paid during the trials and everything.
Oh, wow.
Over the years, he completed 2 deployments and he earned like a ton of awards and accolades. And his boss even described him as a shining example for all. As for Gary, he had returned to England with Jana, where he ended up meeting and marrying a British nurse. And after a few more years in England, the family moved back to the States, settling in a small town just 15 miles outside of Fort Lewis, Washington in 1998. What he didn't know at the time was that earlier that year, Tim Hennis, his wife Angela, and their 2 children had actually just moved to Fort Lewis earlier that same year. So they were living just 15 miles apart from each other. And they actually like don't find this out at the time they're living there. They find it out like later on. And it's just horrible. Like Jana talks about in this interview, she's like, literally my worst nightmare my entire life was like, I always wondered why he didn't kill me. And I always worried, like, is he going to come back for me? And so to find out that for years, like
guy
we
that
literally
they thought that did it lived 15 miles from your house
because they moved to England and then to Washington to be as far as fuck away from this guy as they
Yeah.
possibly could, like knowing that he was out. And he just happened to, I think it genuinely was a coincidence. Again, unluckiest man alive, I guess.
What did he do? What is he getting karma for?
So
Because-
it's just weird. Like,
Yeah,
it's just weird.
that's
And like,
wild.
it's sad hearing her talk about it. And like, and plus with Hennis acquitted, the question remained like, who killed them
Yeah.
then? If Hennis didn't do it. But Gary and the police never like wavered. They always believed that it was Tim Hennis. So after he was acquitted, they didn't really feel like there was more that they could do. Like, they didn't think investigating any further was going to lead them to a different conclusion. I'm sure they were open to hearing like if something came forward, like a like witness or new evidence or something, but pretty much the case had just gone completely cold. And it remained that way for decades until May 12th, 2005, which was exactly 20 years to the date after the bodies were discovered. So on this day, the Fayetteville Police Department was holding a seminar for homicide detectives, and they used the Eastburn case and the wrongful conviction of Tim Hennis as a case study. And they had used this as a case study many times in their like homicide detective training over the years because it was precedent setting. Like, this man was convicted based off like an emotional, jury and an eyewitness who wasn't trustworthy. And it was like this, the shining example of like a wrongful conviction that was like righted, they, whatever. And now there's
They tried to
justice
use
because
this as an example,
they got this innocent man out of prison. And so again, they had used this example like many times over the years, but this time they had a special guest in attendance named Scott Wisnett. So Scott was the author of a book about the Eastburn Hennis case titled Innocent Victims, which he explains the title actually refers to both the Eastburn victims and Tim Hennis as a victim. The book basically goes into, obviously, what happened to the Eastburn family was literally more tragic than the most tragic thing you could ever think of. Yeah. But he also talks about how what happened to Tim Hennis was tragic and his entire life was kind of destroyed from this. Now, the police department had actually used this book to help develop the seminar, so they were excited to have him and he was excited to be there. After the seminar ended, a detective named Larry Trotter asked to speak with Wisnett alone. So outside of the building, Wisnett and Trotter introduced themselves, and it kind of sounds like before Trotter could even get to what he wanted to talk about, Wisnett's like, is the government going to solve this case? And it's just like, what are you guys doing? Because this is the Fayetteville Police Department.
Yeah. And
Wisnett had spent years researching and writing this book, and he had even interviewed Tim Hennis and a lot of the, Bob Seafelt, a lot of the people in this case, and he wanted to see justice for, everyone. And he tells Trotter, there's still an important piece of evidence that you have been ignoring for years. The semen samples found in Katie Eastburn.
Oh, shit.
So Wisnett remarked that at that point, this was a lab's case. They needed to test that DNA. The lab was the one that was going to solve this case, basically. And DNA testing had come a long way since the 80s.
Yeah, it's 2005,
so Wisnett asked Trotter, he's like, why haven't you tested the DNA yet? Let's find out who did this. And that was all the push that Trotter needed. He retrieved the samples from the evidence storage at Cumberland County Sheriff's Office and sent them off to the State Bureau of Investigation for testing. It took about a year for the results to come back, but there was a hit on the DNA. The sperm found inside the body of Katie Eastburn was a match for none other than Timothy Hennis.
Oh my God.
According to the lab, the semen was 1.2 quadrillion times more likely to be Hennis's than any other white man in North Carolina.
Oh my God.
Was that what you expected?
No, I was like, oh, it had to have been somebody else.
That's what I thought.
It had to have been somebody else. This guy cannot be this unlucky.
That's what
Oh
I thought.
my
You're
God.
like, this is unlucky. This poor fucking guy. And you're
Yeah.
like, what are the odds?
And then
what are the odds? The odds are too low because he
Dude.
fucking did it.
Oh my
and that's
God.
why it didn't make sense. So ironically, Wisnan, who was like basically this, he was like a spokesperson for Tim Hennis and like his innocence. So he's the author of the book that portrayed, he's the author of the book that portrayed Hennis as basically this fourth victim of the Eastburn murders.
His life's work was to prove this man innocent and like to.
And he ends up being the one that leads police to the smoking gun against Tim Hennis. Now,
my mind is blown. Oh my God,
dude. And by the way, keep in mind, he was acquitted 20 years. Like, he's been free for years. He was only in prison for like not even a full year before the second trial.
Damn.
So Trotter shares this information with the Cumberland County DA and Detective Biddle, who immediately calls to inform Gary. And I watched like interviews with Gary and Biddle like talking about this moment. And basically Biddle's like calls him and he's like, "Are you sitting down?" He's like, "No, should I be?" Because he also hasn't talked to Biddle in years. So he's like, he knows something big. He's like, "You better sit down and dig yourself deep into a chair because because the DNA matched Tim Hennis." And
could you imagine though, like
I would just be in
everything that family has been through, especially Jana. She fucking knew because she was like, "This was my biggest nightmare. We moved away to get away from this person and all of those memories in that town, that house," and she fucking knew. I think she knew.
So,
I don't think that she could say it because she didn't know why she knew, but I think that she
just like had intuition.
I think she knew.
So now, unfortunately, because Tim Hennis had been acquitted on all charges, the state could not take him to trial as it would be considered double jeopardy. Now, the Fifth Amendment states that citizens cannot be tried twice for the same offense. However, the way that it is worded, there is a small caveat to this. So double jeopardy only pertains to a specific sovereignty. So for example, this is why like weed is illegal federally, but it's legal in some states because the state court and the federal court are different sovereignties.
Mm-hmm. And doesn't state have precedence over?
Yes. And this is why the federal court, like, they don't like to try and insert themselves on states' matters. So they're not going to retry Tim Hennis because he was acquitted in a state Supreme Court. A state Supreme Court is kind of tied to the federal court. If you know a lot about law, you're going to be like, this dumb girl trying to explain this. And I'm sorry, but I'm doing my best. But I can't, like, I'm the TikTok fucking generation. I can't read legal documents for 5 hours. I'm doing my best, though. But so, like, the North Carolina Supreme Court is, like, tied to the federal court. So they can't retry him in the federal court either in any way. So all I know is they can't. The federal court's
they can't retry him. For
like
murder.
no, shaking their finger. We're not doing it. So, luckily for the world, Tim Hennis was a military man, and the military has their own court system.
Oh shit!
So, they could try Tim Hennis by court-martial in a military trial, but they had to jump through one more hoop first. Only active military members can be tried in a military court, and Tim Hennis had retired. So they had to request approval from the Secretary of the Army to call Hennis back to active duty.
Without him knowing, right? Or no? Can they do that?
They have to notify him that they're going to give him active duty. Like, they have to call him back to active duty. But this was like, they don't do this type of thing. If someone's found innocent, or found not guilty in a like normal court, even though the military can do this, they don't do this kind of thing. Like, it's very rare.
This isn't a heard of thing.
So, like, they request it, but they don't think they're gonna get it. Well, less than a month after requesting permission was granted. And on September 6, 2006, police personally delivered Hennis's orders to return to active duty and report to Fort Bragg, back in North Carolina within 30 days.
Oh, I'm sure he's shitting himself.
Well, the
Oh,
whole time he's
God.
like, why?
Yeah, that's what I'm
this
saying.
is
Like,
bullshit.
Because
Like,
they could call him back to active duty
But I
without
don't-
saying they're going to retry him, right?
right. I don't think he's even I don't
has no
think he
idea.
realizes at the time
He
that
still
they're going to
thinks that
try
he's getting
him.
away with it. He's just like, why am I being called?
Well, he has no idea that the DNA match
Oh,
was
yeah.
made. He has no idea. So they call him back to active duty. And when he returns to Fort Bragg, he was once again charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder and was once again looking at the possibility of ending up on death row. Now, unfortunately, the statute of limitations on rape, sexual assault had run out, so they couldn't charge him with Katie's sexual assault. But 21 years after being acquitted, the third trial of Tim Hennis began. Jana, who we all know is the baby, is now 26 years old at this third trial. Now, for the most part, both the prosecution and defense's arguments were like pretty much the same as they had been in the previous trials. They had to go through all of those things. Unlike the other trials, though, everyone knew that what it was really going to come down to was that DNA. So the defense had to find a way to explain this. So they claimed that Hennis, whose story had previously been that he picked up the dog and on Tuesday night left, never saw Katie Eastburn again. Now they're claiming that he actually had consensual sex with Katie the night he picked up the dog, 2 days before the murder. So his lawyers argued that the semen only proved adultery, not murder. The lead defense attorney argued, quote, "One of the ways of the world and one of the things that we know about human nature is that things can occur spontaneously and for no significant reason. A young soldier whose wife just had a baby recently, a captain's wife, while the captain has been away for a long time. All I'm asking is it possible that something occurred independent of the murders?" End quote. Basically, what he's alleging is that Katie Eastburn had a random man come over to the house to pick up the dog, but somehow was just so enthralled with the man that she decided to have sex with him right then and there on a Tuesday night while all 3 of her daughters were in the home. Then she just lets this man, who she's never met before today, finish inside of her. And the semen was still inside of her more than 48 hours later when she just happened to be murdered by someone else.
Yeah, no, there's no way.
That's what they're asking you to believe. They're also asking you to believe that she, who we know was raped, we know she was raped just based on the fact that her underwear had been ripped off. The buttons from her shirt were torn off and in the living room, and that she was found naked from the waist down with her bra up to her neck. So they're asking you to believe that she had consensual sex. Then 2 days later, she was raped and murdered, but the sperm found inside her was from days before, from a different man.
I mean, can you imagine if that was like a medical possibility that like so many people would like? I'm just how probable is that? I don't know.
Now, not only is the story like fantastic, just fantastical and unbelievable, but the medical
props to whoever fucking came up with that narrative.
What an
defense.
idiot. And I'm going to tell you a couple reasons why it's stupid. So first of all, the medical examiner who performed Katie's autopsy testified that he believed that the sperm found in Katie must have been deposited shortly before her death. While he couldn't give an exact time, he does note that after a day or two, sperm start to lose their tails and start to disintegrate. But the sample from Katie was abundant and intact sperm, making it extremely improbable, if not impossible, that the sperm that was found in Katie had been there for almost 4 days. Because remember, he's saying Tuesday they had sex. Thursday night she's murdered. They don't find the bodies until Sunday, though. So the autopsy is not performed until Sunday. So they're saying that...
I mean, that's more than 4 days then, right?
Oh, yeah, 5 days. Sorry, I'm doing 2 days in between. So basically, they're trying to say that this abundant and intact sperm that was found in Katie was from Tuesday. And the medical examiner was like,
damn,
absolutely
his
not.
Swimmers got to be real supersonic swimmers, man.
So not only like did it make no fucking sense at all, but this defense did not go over well with the jury, who were all military personnel. So they're saying, oh, you know, he like Katie's husband was away, and this is just what people do while their husbands are away for a long. They just fuck the random guy. That's what they're saying. And there's an interview with Katie Eastburn where he's like, basically, I'm being dragged to this third trial, and they're sitting
trying
there
to say that
insinuating
my wife
cheated
cheated on me
I think
while
he
I'm
uses.
away.
I should check this before saying it, but I'm pretty sure he's like they're calling my wife a whore in front of everybody, trying to defend his murderer. He's like, I can't explain like the feeling that I had when they were saying that.
Yeah, I mean, can you imagine the rage you must feel going that long, 20 years later, after you had to just deal with the fact that your wife's and children's murderer was let go and just was free, and then, oh my God.
But also, it's a stupid defense because you're asking these people who are in the military and who are away from their spouses for long periods of time. Like, the whole premise you're giving them is like, this is what people do when they're away from their spouses. So, like, if they have been away from their spouses for long periods and they never cheated, they're like, this is fucking bullshit. Like, no, that's not what people do. The jury deliberated only for 3 hours before delivering guilty verdicts on all 3 counts. And 1 week later, Tim Hennis was sentenced to death for the second time.
How old was he at this point? He's got to be in his 60s, right?
I don't know. He was 27 at the time, and this is...
So he was probably, what, in his 40s, 50s?
Yeah, maybe like early 50s. Probably early 50s. But, so even though he was on death row, it's really unlikely that Tim Hennis will actually ever be executed. The military has sentenced other people to death row in recent years, but they haven't actually executed any death row inmates since the 1960s. So it's not really like something that they do anymore. Now, while it seems like this twisty, turny story has been wrapped up in a neat bow and justice has been finally served, it's not necessarily the case. There are still a lot of unanswered questions in this case, and a lot of people, including author Scott Wisnett, who wrote the book on the case, still believe Hennis to be innocent despite the DNA. So first of all, in my opinion...
Please explain, yeah.
First of all, in my opinion, respectfully, Scott Wisnett probably just needs to shut the fuck up. He literally goes on like the 2020 show and they're interviewing him. And this is after the DNA was found and everything. And after Hennis is convicted. And he's on the show saying that he doesn't think Hennis could have done it. He doesn't think Hennis did it. And when they're like, how, why can you? And he's like, I don't know. I spoke with him so many times. I just don't believe he did it. And it's like, shut the fuck up, Wisnett. Shut up. You're wrong. The book you spent your years on was fucking wrong. Your life's work, I'm sorry, it was wrong. And but like, I don't know if I feel like he genuinely thinks that Tim Hennis is innocent. Like, he believes it. Like, at first I was like, maybe he's just like trying to say that because he doesn't want his
discredit
book
his whole work.
But it's like, everyone was on the same page as you. Like, obviously.
Yeah.
Everyone thought for a while that he was... And not everyone, but a lot of people.
Everybody thought that he was just this really unlucky motherfucker.
So now, when they're asking him like why, well, and they interview one of Hennis's like defense attorneys, I think from the first trial, and they're asking them why, and they're like, well, one reason is actually the DNA itself. So apparently, the lab that had handled the sample at one time, I don't think it's reported differently everywhere. Like
a damaged sample, or
they're like, some people say that they're the ones that did the DNA testing. Some people say they didn't do the DNA testing, but they had handled the sample when they were testing the other physical evidence. Like, it was all came together when they were testing the blood and stuff way back, like when the murders happened. And the semen sample was with it, but it wasn't tested at that time because they couldn't do anything with it. But the problem is like the lab 4 months after Hennis's third trial, That lab in particular was under scrutiny because there was evidence that they were overstating, misreporting, or withholding blood evidence in dozens of cases, including tons of like death row trials. And in 3 of these cases, the convicted had actually already been executed. Now, it's important to note that like most sources say that that this lab is actually not the one that performed the testing on the DNA sample. But even if it was done at this lab, they know for certain that the person who did the DNA testing was not one of these people who was doing this. Mm-hmm. So I can't confirm, I could not find for sure if it was done at the same lab or not, but I do know that it was specific people at the lab that were under scrutiny and that there was evidence against them for doing this, and it was not the same person who tested the DNA sample. So it's a little confusing, but also if it was faked, which is what they're trying to say, it couldn't have fucking been faked. I'm sorry. Like, why would they fake it?
It's pretty fucking hard to fake DNA evidence.
Why would they fake it for this? Like, the second trial was very convincing that Tim Hennis did not do it. So why would they fucking fake it? Like, these people at the lab who are not like emotionally involved, like, why would they?
What do they have to gain from that?
Yes, like, because if anything, to me, like, the second trial was pretty convincing that he was innocent.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's not like everything was pointing to him, but they needed just one more thing. Like, it kind of seemed like nothing was pointing to him.
Yeah.
So and even if they did, let's say, like, devil's advocate, they did, then why would Hennis's defense say, yeah, well, it was there because he had sex with Katie and it was consensual sex? You know what I mean? Like, why wouldn't they be like, that's fucking, no, there's no way. Like, that was fake. Test it again. Like, whatever. They're just like explaining it away because to me, it seems like Tim is like, it was my semen. Mm-hmm. Now, Tim doesn't testify in the third trial. So, you know, we don't know, but.
That's insane. I have so many questions.
I know.
I have so many questions.
But there are still other questions about other physical evidence, like the blood on the towel in the bathroom, the pubic hair. I don't know. Now, one thing I did see is like the house was a rental, and I think they had just moved in a few months prior. So like some people are saying like maybe
that
the fucking
left over.
Yeah, the pubic hair just left over, like hairs float around and whatever. Maybe it's like under the I don't know. But it does. There are like questions. Like, they had that second witness that was delivering the newspapers, and she said she saw a guy with long stringy hair outside the Eastburn's house. But it's also like she just saw him in his car, in his van outside the house.
He didn't have blood on his clothing, whatever.
But remember earlier when I was like, remind me about the second witness, don't let me forget, because the light bulb just went off. Yeah. This made me think.
John Rapow?
No. I was talking about the guy in the van that she saw with like the long stringy hair.
Yeah.
This made me think, what if Hennis didn't do it alone? Like, who does he have a friend with long stringy hair?
But also,
and would the pubic hair and the blood match that guy?
I mean, maybe, but what is the motive? What is the reason for him
to rape Katie?
But he has a wife and child at home that are, you know.
Like, I don't know.
I have so many questions, and then for the murder to be that gruesome and to that extent, I can't help but think that they knew each other before then, or he stalked her. I don't know, because and then to not have any other crimes committed for 20 years after?
That's what everyone says, is they're like, this guy, like, everyone who knew him, he worked with that, like, they're like, he's never connected to anything else.
Yeah.
So to do something that vicious and fucking horrible and never do it again, some people are like, that's just unbelievable. Like, this guy was a good guy the rest of his entire life. Like,
I mean, yeah, look at what he did back in the Army when he went back. He got all those awards, and he served his time, and he was...
Exactly.
You know, it's like there's so many questions.
But then it's also like, well, he kind of knows that like he got off and it was a close call. Like maybe he just fucking was like, or me, you know, maybe this is the other thing is like, it kind of seems to me, it's like, okay, let's say he did it. It sounds like the motive, as far as we know, as far as like the prosecution is kind of portraying it, he goes over there like trying to have sex with Katie Eastburn. Like, I don't know if he was like trying to have consensual sex and she said no, or like if he was like just walked in there ready to rape her. But it's like,
I mean, yeah, that could be.
But we also don't know if he knew that she had those 3 kids. Like maybe the kids were in bed on Tuesday when he came.
Yeah, it was 8:30,
and so maybe he goes in there and he starts raping her and the kids come out and he doesn't, and he's fucking panics.
He doesn't know what to do.
And maybe he went in there just planning to kill Katie, like rape and kill her. And then the kids come out and then he feels like he panics and he does it. And then maybe the kids were like, maybe he was okay with killing Katie, but the kids were too much. And so he never does anything again because he like fucking, regrets. So I don't know, but it's like, it's a good question. It's crazy to think that someone could do something that horrible and it wasn't like motivated by like that serial killer, like sadistic instinct. Because there's also like, they talk to the ex-girlfriend and everything. It's never like, oh, he would beat me or like he was into some weird like, violent sex or something like that. You know what I mean? It's just odd.
I mean, yeah, though, but like, I don't know. I'm just trying to paint this picture of like what happened. Like, it's so crazy.
It is crazy.
Because I mean, he got the dog at what, like 8:30, 9 o'clock?
Yeah, it was right before 9 p.m. So like little girls that age, like definitely, they might go to bed at fucking 7 p.m. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty late for a little, like 3 little kids to go to bed by yourself, And I mean, if it was me and you have a stranger from an ad in a newspaper coming to check out your dog, my kids would not be anywhere in sight, And so maybe he was like so infatuated with her and was like, oh, well, maybe I'll try it again. And since the ex-girlfriend, he couldn't do that, he's like, oh, who else can I go to? And so that's where he went.
And he shows up unannounced at her house like he did
and
to
she shut him down and was like, no, what the fuck? No.
But then it's also like, okay, let's say he goes over there wanting sex. She's like, does the same thing that Nancy did and is like, absolutely not.
Yeah, like,
but why did he kill her? But he didn't do anything to Nancy. Maybe because he was connected to Nancy, or like what happened to like, if he wasn't planning on murdering her, what happened to like set him off? That like, it's just crazy. I mean, I like allegedly don't fucking sue. I don't think he can since he got convicted, but like, I think he fucking did it.
I think he did it too.
I think he did it. I think I think it's unlikely that someone else was involved just because I'm like, how would that not have come out yet? But I do think it's possible, like, because there is that other evidence at the scene, and without matching it to like one of their family friends or like someone that would be at the house, like,
I mean, yeah,
you don't know.
There's no one else that could have done it. I feel like,
right?
I mean, maybe, yeah, because everything was, all of her clothes and thing were in the living room, so maybe, I don't know. Yeah, like maybe he came over to say, oh, there's something wrong with the dog, or just to talk about it, and then
that's what I think, because he says he talks to Katie on the phone Thursday evening, that she called him about the dog. Mm-hmm. And it's like, well, he says he told her that, oh, the dogs are getting along great, like, we're gonna keep her. But maybe he told her, oh, they're not getting along really like they're not getting along while
like,
they're fighting. Like,
if I think
back? I'm gonna have to bring her, like, give her back to you.
Yeah.
Like, what time should I come over? And then maybe he planned on dropping Angela. I don't know, like, where Angela going to stay at her parents' house like came from. Like, I don't know. I would assume that like if it was Tim's idea, that would have come out, but maybe not. It was she stuck by him the whole time. Through all 3 trials.
I was looking at pictures and even when he was retried the 3rd time, she was right there, so.
Yeah. And you know what I can say to that? Wouldn't be me.
Yeah.
Honestly, I don't know. Actually, maybe that's hard to say. It's like if you never did any, like,
You
and
never
it's
fucking know. You never know someone. Like, you never truly know somebody, and that's so scary.
Yeah. So from 2011 to 2020, Hennis repeatedly appealed his conviction for the murders. His appeals focus on challenging the jurisdiction of the military court to try him for the crimes. So his arguments included claims that his previous discharge from the military and his subsequent re-enlistment created, quote, a break in service. And he's saying that this rendered him immune from prosecution for crimes committed during his first term of service. Now, despite multiple appeals to various courts, including the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit and the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Armed Forces, Hennis's challenges were consistently denied. The U.S. Supreme Court also declined to review his case. His most recent appeal was denied in 2020. So basically, he's trying to say, like, you can't fucking try me for this. Like, the military court has no jurisdiction over him. He was retired and blah, 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 blah.
He's reaching.
And to that I say,
struggling.
And there are actually, like, I read a lot of people that are saying, do I think he did it? Yes. Do I think that like it was constitutionally right to retry him? People are like, no. He should have gone free, and because that's the way it fucking works, and blah, 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 blah. And to that I say nay. Fuck you, Tim Hennis.
Yeah.
Good on the military. Do I think...
Which they aren't always. So for them to
they're
correct
not,
something...
It's not like they're doing it for, like, little crimes and, like, evidence.
This guy brutally murdered a woman. He stabbed her 15 times. That's not accidentally killing someone.
He slit the throat of a 5-year-old girl so deeply she was almost decapitated. He killed a three.
I thought it was...
No, you're right. Yeah, the 3-year-old.
Yeah.
But he killed the 5-year-old while she was hiding from him under a blanket.
With a child of his own. A daughter of his own.
A newborn daughter. How do you look at your daughter?
Oh my God. How do you not... That's another thing, is, like, how do you do that crime and live your life? How do you not... I mean, if...
Go fucking insane.
Like, how do you not...
I think you lied yourself so fucking much that you convinced yourself you didn't do it.
And I mean, that was a brutal murder, though. I have a hard time believing that he never did anything else. I have a very hard time believing that.
It makes no sense to me.
It makes absolutely no sense.
But, I mean, I think he fucking did it. Now, one of the things I wanted to talk about is, like, Emily and I had kind of talked about earlier, like, doing this podcast is, like, you want it to be entertaining for the listeners because you want people to keep coming back. But, like, also a true crime podcast, like, in my opinion, should not just be about, like, telling this. This is a wild, twisty-turny story, and it is very intriguing. That is all true, and I think it's fine that that's all true. And you hear us, like, kind of cracking little, like, quips here and there. And I think that makes it interesting. It makes it digestible. It makes it, like, enjoyable to listen to. And I think I want to make it clear that, like, that needs to be purposeful because we do that and we tell these stories in a way we hope that are still, like, very respectful but are interesting to listen to, because if people aren't listening, like, there's no point in telling the stories. And I think that there should be a purpose behind us telling the story and everyone. So whether it's, you know, someone is still missing, we still don't know what happened to a victim. We think we know what happened to a victim and justice hasn't been served. We see police corruption in a case because, you know, that needs to be highlighted so police don't want to fucking do it again. You know, things like that. And so I think it's important for us to, like, look at every case we do and say, okay, are we just telling this to, like, entertain people and, like, shock them? Or are we telling this story for an actual purpose? And I think when I picked this case, you know, on top of everything I just listed for, like, reasons we might tell a story, there are also a lot of cases that I listen to that I think have changed the way that I act and I like protect myself in the world. And it's funny because like a lot of my friends, like they'll be telling me stories and I have this like joke that I'm like, you obviously don't listen to true crime
Yeah.
because I would never do that.
Yep.
And this story made me think. I actually picked it because the little pod lab Emily and I are sitting in right now. Emily's sitting on some recliner. Like we have 2 recliners down here that don't match each other. And I was kind of thinking they're in the way. I'm like, I should sell these on Facebook Marketplace, get it out of here. But I didn't want to put them on my profile because I can't fit them in my car. I can't take them somewhere. I'm like, I am not going to have someone come to my house and meet me and then they know where I live. And I want to make it clear, I am not victim blaming Katie Eastburn. What happened to her and her family is absolutely in no fucking way her fault at all. No one ever thinks that that will happen to them. No one. But when we listen to these stories, I think it is important to tell the ones that teach us something about how we can better protect ourselves. And I think that's a story. Don't put stuff on Facebook. Put it on Facebook Marketplace. Meet someone in a public place with someone with you, especially if you're a woman. And
Never fucking know. You don't know anyone. No, you never know. I mean, she probably thought she was safe because this guy probably told her. I mean, Tim Hennis.
he's a military man. He's
in
an
the
army
military.
sergeant.
Yes.
She's a military wife.
Exactly.
That's like camaraderie.
Yeah. She's like, oh, okay, he works with my husband. They probably know each other, you know?
It's just this is the thing is stranger danger wasn't a thing until like the early 1990s. Like, you know, we all grew up hearing, hey, if someone, like when you're a kid, if someone offers you candy, they're full of shit. If an adult asks you for help finding their lost dog, and we grew up knowing that. But the only reason we know that is because that
Cases
happened,
like this
because that
happen,
used to
yeah.
work, because people did not know how, they didn't know how criminals work. They didn't have the information they needed to best protect themselves. And so that's why I think like stories like this are important. And I think it's important to talk about the fact that, you know, Katie Eastburn didn't know at the time. She didn't have the information she needed to know that that was a dangerous thing to do, is to let a stranger come to your house.
All she was trying to do was find a better home for her dog that wasn't working out
And
for
she
her,
was,
you know?
and she didn't have someone to watch the kids while she, like Gary was like out of town. Like she was taking care of 3 young kids by herself. Like, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I made sense, but that's just what I wanted to say. I wanted to say that yes, it's a twisty turny case. Yes, it's interesting and it's shocking at times. And I hope people enjoy listening to this episode and to this podcast. But I want to make sure that like every episode we do, there's a purpose beyond just making it enjoyable to listen to.
Yeah.
And I think we like can learn some stuff from it. Anyway. We did it, Emily. But yeah, check us out. Okay, wait. I can't say this. Please follow us online on TikTok at A Trial by Podcast. And it's important, A Trial by Podcast, not just Trial by A Trial by Podcast. We've got TikTok. We've got Instagram. I'm going to make a Facebook before we post this. We don't have a website yet, but we're working on it. My brother is a web developer, so we're working on it. What else?
My stomach just growled really loud.
I hope you can hear it. What else besides website?
Like, follow, subscribe.
Yeah, like, follow, subscribe. Shout out mom and dad. I think you are probably the only 2 people listening. But yeah, okay. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
We have an epilogue. Me and Emily are sitting here after recording, and we're like, where the fuck is the knife? Like, I never saw anything.
But also, the door was locked also. So how did he get out? How did he lock the door behind him? Did he go out through one of the windows? Did he leave through the garage?
What the fuck?
Because when they got
he must
there,
have left through the
door
garage.
was
He must have left through the garage. You know, and you do, dude, I'm just picturing this man after murdering people. You know, when you walk out the garage door and you don't want to use the code thing, so you hit the button and then you fucking run and jump over the sensor without try not to hit your head.
There's no sensor. They probably didn't even have a automatic garage door opener then, you know? When was that?
I don't know, dude.
There's still, like I said, there's still so many questions.
I can't handle it.